Well, today we're continuing that annual pilgrimage of our faith known as Lent. Lent, as we said last Sunday, is a season of soul searching by which we revisit the gospel's grace and our response, especially as these are revealed in the stories of Jesus that culminate in his passion, his death, but not limited there. And so last Sunday, if you recall, if you were here, we considered the ancient story of Noah and the flood, comparing and contrasting it with other, even more ancient stories of the similar kind, and arriving at some strong conclusions about our origin story, this one of our faith, from the book of Genesis, particularly the flood story's aftermath of the rainbow, a sign of God's regard not only for the Jewish people, but for all people, and indeed for creation itself. The rainbow doesn't solve the world, we said, doesn't solve all of its problems or ours. The world remains broken, come rain, come shine. What the rainbow does, rather, is reveal the divine embrace of us, all of us, of human variety and diversity, the bold tapestry of the human family of contrast and color, ever inventive, ever surprising, endlessly rich, which not only expresses the heart of our faith, but gets at something fundamental about the human venture itself, and, by the way, about the true promise of America, which has been under assault. God, the source of creativity, revels in difference, in other words. It draws it, swaths it, encircling the entire creation, all of it and all of us, in one tight, intimate embrace. All of which brings us here today to the doorstep of another conversation. Last week it was about rainbows. This week it's about circles. For curiously, and most of you know this, a rainbow is in reality a circle, a full circle, not just an arc. Sunlight playing on raindrops both refracts and reflects, forming a circular spectrum of colors, so that from the ground we can only see generally a part of that circle, as much of it falls below the horizon. But from up high, from an airplane, say, or a mountaintop like Noah's at the end of that story, we are more likely to see the whole thing. So that in giving us the rainbow, God also gives us the circle. So, circles. Circles are curious things. A circle is a continuous line that curves uniformly so that it is closed, no openings. A circle never discovered a corner. The White House staffer who reported that our president's Nobel Peace Prize medal, weirdly offered to him by Venezuelan opposition politician Maria Corina Machado, which he gladly accepted, by the way, was on display in, quote, a corner of the Oval Office. That staffer does not understand circles, any more than our president understands decorum. But here's the thing, logically, circles, closed as they are, might be seen as keeping things out, or they might equally be seen as holding things in, holding things together. This is a sermon about both options. A sermon about our human tendency to place things outside of our circle, to place outside of the much that is of great value. A sermon about God's insistence on encircling everything in, counting everything as valuable, as belonging, as a part, as us. Consider these scriptural testimonies about circles. Proverbs 8:27 speaks of God drawing a circle on the face of the deep, as in an act of creation and of earthly formation. Or Isaiah 40, verse 22, speaks of the God who sits above the circle of the earth, stretching out the heavens like a tent of dwelling, holding all things in place. While Job, chapter 26, verse 10, has God inscribing a circle on the face of the waters, a boundary between light and darkness, an image that seems to me invokes the horizon where the sun rises and sets, yet posits God as Lord over all horizons, over all of light and dark, thus harmonizing in God's self all that is opposite, all that seems in conflict, all resolved in who God is. My point here is that it matters how we look at circles. Are they primarily about keeping out, holding out, or are they primarily about keeping in? And this, I think, is not only a fundamental faith question, it seems to me it's a first-order socio-political question of our time. Because we're being inundated, and you know this, by choices about what has been referred to as encirclement theory. Now, encirclement theory comes really from a military strategy, but with broader application, it would seem. Encirclement, in military terms, is about the isolation of one force surrounded by an enemy force, strangulating its supply chain, leaving it tactically, if not fatally, weakened. But the language of encirclement is picking up steam around us and has found a home, especially in the lexicon, the language of Christian nationalism. But really of all who claim that America is being systematically weakened by what? By difference, by the other, by the undocumented, by Muslims, by other non-Christians, by immigrants in general, really, or even just as people of color, or anyone whose ancestors didn't arrive on these shores between the late 1500s and sometime last century, excluding, of course, African slaves, not to mention Native Americans who beat us by a lot, the rest of us. Yet Christian nationalism, as we've said before from here, is especially troubling for many of us who call ourselves followers of Jesus. Because, well, of the juxtaposition of Christian and nationalism, the assumption that church and state power are somehow in partnership. They are not. Not to the founders of this nation, not to free church people, definitely not to our Baptist forebears. But Christian nationalists have chosen to conflate some things. They have chosen to define themselves and their identity over against the other. And this is where encirclement theory comes in. In its vision, Christians are encircled by forces, peoples, ideologies, and other religions that seek to dilute, compromise, and destroy it. I mean, did you know that American Christians are being encircled and battled, really, by dangerous forces? Did you realize that? By the immigrants, by the culturally, linguistically different, by the religiously or racially other? Did you know that these forces wish to supplant us and our way of life? Well, Christian nationalism has a solution. Christians must revive this social contract and save America from diversity, from inclusion, from pluralism, from multiculturalism. The way to do this is through politics and cultural dominance. Now, sure, certain others may be tolerated here in America, but they need to know this about America, that this America is a Christian America. It's a white America. It's an English-speaking America. It's a straight America. And these things will be safeguarded. They will be protected. The problem, once again, with all of this is that it is not true. America is not, nor has it ever been, a Christian nation. The very genius of the founding and of the First Amendment is that America is a place for all religions and for no religion all at the same time. And we remind ourselves often here at Cumberland that the early Baptists, our people, were pivotal figures in the anti-establishment and free exercise clauses of the U.S. Constitution. That's who we are. Religion, we have said, needs no props, needs no state sanction. On the contrary, gospel faith must remain free from the state in order to speak truth to the state when it runs afoul of freedom, violates human dignity, or scapegoats other people. And this brings me back around to our theme, circles. It might seem as if a state aligned with the church would be a kind of a unifying feature. Instead, it is a dividing feature, turns out, because narrowly defining both state and church, it takes away agency, power from all who are different. An example of what I mean was fully in evidence this past week at the State of the Union address, which seemed to me anyway to boil down that address to really two primary ideas. Number one, the economy is great for everyone, best ever. And number two, illegal immigrants are marauding the streets, killing real Americans. Now, if we put these two claims in terms of this morning's theme, circles, we get something like this: that a great economy encircles us all, including everybody. We're all doing great. And that true Americans are being encircled by immigrants. They are bearing down on us with malice and violence. Now, the essential problems, again, with these two claims is the plain fact that neither is true, rather the opposite. The rich are continuing to leave the rest behind in this economy, with this administration fueling the greatest transfer of wealth from poor to rich in our history, which is saying something. And these so-called violent immigrants, they're our neighbors, our janitors, our grocers, our day laborers and mechanics and child care workers. Their kids go to our schools. They play Little League and soccer. They are in our circle, while the very wealthy this administration looks out for in this otherwise struggling economy are those who live in a circle that is not ours, believe me. It is a tight and exclusive circle, leaving most people out. So it's all backwards. Now, most Americans probably don't notice or care about a State of the Union address, and maybe that's a good thing. And whether or not it's conveying reality or fantasy, but the actual circles remain, and these are either including or excluding. And what about, though, that other frame for this question of circles? What about circles not of exclusion but of inclusion? Can we talk about those? Let's start back with our lead scripture in Colossians chapter 3, which Kathy let me know is one of her favorites, and she was so glad. I'm glad you got here. Bless your heart. You got here, dear. We appreciate you. Where we read these most remarkable words, again echoing what Kathy read. Here there is no longer Greek and Jew. Here there is no longer circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave, free, but Christ is all and in all. So above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. I love that. What about that kind of holy circle, Christian? What about this gospel circle? What about this Jesus circle? Here, encirclement doesn't shut people out. Here, it holds people in. And holy God is the keeper of it. And so this is where we are, you and I. We're followers of Jesus and this vision of inclusion and of encirclement beyond human boundaries that we would draw. Christian nationalism is based on the belief in an exclusive, delimiting world. The gospel of Jesus, founded on the one God of universal love, brings us an inclusive vision of the world, encompassing of all together. This is the gospel to which we were called, and which asks us to stand with and for all of those who are now being demonized and savaged, and too often under the banner of Christian nationalism. At the State of the Union last week, a president of the United States told all present to stand if they believed the first duty of our government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. Make no mistake, not only was his challenge a false choice, since all are children of God together, of equal worth and value. It was a blatant authoritarian move designed to divide America in two. And if you struggle with this, if you struggle with it, then I simply invite you to recall anew that story of Jesus, who, once confronted by an expert of the law with the question, "Who is my neighbor?" responded. A man going down from Jerusalem to Jericho was attacked by robbers, who stripped and beat him and left him for dead. A priest and a Levite walked right by him on the other side of the road. But a Samaritan, an outsider, a man not one of us, a guy not of our circle, had pity on this man, cleaned and dressed his wounds, and took him to safety. Then Jesus asked that lawyer. Jesus asked our public officials and legislators. Jesus asked the self-avowed Christian nationalists. Jesus asked you and asks me, who then was this man's neighbor? Who then is your neighbor? And how will we fashion the circle of our lives now? Amen.